All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody has had a wonderful, wonderful match week. We are already getting back on track again. Um, After such huge event. Um, I am so excited to be here with you guys again. This is my favorite part of the month. Let me be honest with you. It's my favorite part of the month. I am so happy to have more people joining our program. Again, anybody you have in your institution that is a program coordinator, UME, GME, whatever, who will benefit, you think will benefit of this, please forward them the information. We are happy to have them in our listserv and our emails. Again, this session has been we're recording this session, and I will post the recording in our Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Padlet pages after the fact. I am so happy to say that I met such wonderful people during the ACGME conference. So many of you that were there, that came up to me. I am so happy that I get to meet all of you. Honestly, I was really overwhelmed. And not saying it lightly, because let me be honest with you, I didn't think when we start all this that this will reach such great heights and that we get such great response. So kudos to everybody who is here, because you are the reason we are here. We love doing this with you guys. So what we have today, I'm getting such great comments in the chat. We have today a great presentation about navigating team relationships, and it's going to be presented by Emily Dos Santos. She's the Assistant Director of Interprofessional Education and Practice in the Division of Health Systems here at the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth. Before I leave it up to her, just a reminder, I'm posting the attendance and evaluation forms into the chat every so often. Please fill those out. We take those evaluation forms seriously. We like to see what's going on and what suggestions you have. Next month, as you see, we will have our annual needs assessment and lessons learned session. So we're gonna get together and just see what are the lessons you learned during this year with the academy or outside the academy. And we were going to start filling out our needs assessment so we can start working on next year's programming. A lot of changes, a lot of big projects are coming with the APC. So little by little, we're going to keep expanding this network. So I will not take more of your time. Emily, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you'll be able to share yours.
Good, thank you. All right, let me get this pulled up. And get I have 3 screens I work with on a daily basis. So the setup I have to do when I get everything shared is always a fun thing to navigate. Thank you guys so much for being here. Like she said, my name is Emily Dos Santos. I am the Assistant Director in the Department of Interprofessional Education and Practice here at UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth, Texas. Our department is all about teamwork, and it's all about navigating how to be an effective team member, sort of through the lens of interprofessionalism. And so the presentation that I'm going to be giving today is very similar to one of the training sessions that we actually provide for our medical residents here in Fort Worth, Texas, about navigating team, specifically when it comes to navigating conflict and the communication issues that can arise when we go through that. This kind of came about when a lot of the preceptors that the residents were and the medical students were with brought up the fact that the one thing that they are seeing as sort of a lack in their students and in their residents is that they really are having a very difficult time in navigating conflict. And so they really wanted that to be addressed in some of their trainings so that they could get more used to it, get more comfortable with it, and know how to navigate it when it arises. So that's kind of the basis for this. And that's how I'm going to be going through some of this material. So it's not about who you like, but it's about how you choose to interact. And I'm sure y'all can relate to that statement pretty well. So we have 3 objectives for today. The first one is going to be to cultivate those conditions, kind of that environment that we want to work in, where communication is manageable. Even though sometimes it can seem impossible, it can seem really difficult, we're going to make it so that it's manageable for you guys. We're going to reframe our beliefs and attitudes about conflict, and then we're going to identify some of the causes, but mainly the strategies for addressing it when it does arise in your work. I like to start this presentation off with this blurb that's on the screen here, and it's all about assuming positive intent, which I just full disclosure is an extremely difficult thing to do in your day-to-day life. And so I'm going to read through this, and as I read through it, I want this to kind of set the foundation for your mindset as we go through the rest of this. But I also want you to think about how these statements resonate with your current beliefs when it comes to communication and then just the relationships that you have in your life. So we live in a time when public discourse has become hostile, conspiracy theories abound, and the uncertainty of the economy has people covering their backs in an effort to protect their jobs. We've been raised to be careful who we trust, and we've learned that not everyone who smiles at us is our friend. We believe, we've been conditioned to be suspicious, to think that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Are you starting to relate to some of these statements? I see some heads nodding. If a person offers advice, we might dissect it to figure out what their real agenda is. If someone disagrees with us or calls out an area where we might need improvement, we may become defensive because we feel threatened or criticized on both a professional and a personal level. In addition to saving valuable energy and sort of why assuming positive intent is so important, you're able to really circumvent these unnecessary stresses and emotional cycles. And assuming positive intent really can improve your professional life in a few different ways. So a team that has a policy of assuming positive intent will typically be more efficient and better at collaborating because of that improved communication. As a person who assumes positive intent, you're someone that people can be more comfortable collaborating with and coming to with some certain issues that they may have. And as a result, you are going to get more offers to partner and to collaborate with individuals. And then finally, when you assume positive intent, you let others know that you have confidence in them, and people will go to greater lengths for those types of people when they know that you believe in them. And so the most common fear when it comes to assuming positive intent is that it makes you a fool, and that you're, falling into this belief that, oh, everybody's a good person. It's a common fear, but it's not true. And it really is going to set you up for success if you just kind of go with this or throughout your professional and personal relationships. All right, so here's our first objective. We're going to establish those conditions where we can manage communication. So there's 2 avenues that are best utilized when it comes to manageable communication. The first one is emotional intelligence, and then the second one is psychological safety. So we're going to go into both of these individually. But just very quickly, emotional intelligence is all about handling your relationships in a wise way and also in an empathetic way. And then the second one, psychological safety. This is kind of a buzzword now. People are really trying to jump onto this train, and it's all about sharing expectations that are really for establishing those conditions, those working environments where teamwork is not just necessary, but it's expected. And in order for you to be able to work in a psychologically safe environment, you really have to set those conditions. So the first one, emotional intelligence, we'll go over. There's 4 typical components of emotional intelligence, and they're all sort of intertwined. The first one, though, that is most important for you as an individual is self-awareness. It's all about being able to accurately assess yourself as an individual. And it's all about being confident in your ability to do that and the reflection that you're seeing. And what that leads into is you being able to manage yourself. So this self-management portion. Are or you're able to better to control yourself emotionally. And it leads to a more positive nature when you're able to not only be aware of yourself, but manage your emotions as well. What that leads into is being more socially aware. So you're able to empathize a lot better once you have that control over yourself. You're able to go into different situations and orient yourself a lot easier because you've already taken the time for yourself and now you're able to extend this into your social environments. And then the last portion being relationship management. So it's a lot easier for you to develop others once you've taken on these first three aspects. You can inspire more and it's going to lead into easier conflict resolution. So those are the four big components of emotional intelligence and sort of how there's like a systematic flow to them, but also how they're intertwined. And then moving into psychological safety, I like to start off with this one. This quote, it was written a long time ago, but most recently was quoted in a book by an author named Amy Edmondson. She's kind of the pioneer in this whole psychological safety and working in a psychologically safe work environment. But she says, or she quotes Edmund Burke, and she says that no passion so effectively robs the mind of its powers of acting and reasoning as fear. If you can relate to that, I know I can. If you work in an environment where fear is a common thing that you're just really used to when it comes to your relationships, communicating, making mistakes, anything like that, you're not going to be able to do anything much past that. So how do we build psychological safety? There's three main steps that you as a leader, or really anybody that's in a working environment, can do to help build up these conditions, this working environment. The first one is to set the stage. So you really need to share those expectations up front about failure. So what are we going to do when, not if, it occurs? Uncertainty and then interdependence, because really if you're working in any environment, you're going to be working on some sort of team, right? And so at some point, because you're part of a team, you're a team member, you're going to be interdependent on each other. And so setting the stage for those expectations is sort of the foundation. That's the first step for what you need to do. And like I said, I mentioned leaders, but literally anybody in an environment working with other people can do this, and you should do this, and that should be expected. The second thing to do is to simply invite participation. So you want to get people working together, and it's all about acknowledging that situational humility. So thinking of yourself less and thinking of others more. You really need to bring in this idea of inquiry. So just being curious. It's as simple as that, being curious about the people that you work with. Not only on a professional level, but on a little bit of a personal level as well. And then also acknowledging the guidelines for input. Hopefully the situations that you work in and the situations that you find yourself in, there is an expectation that you will speak up and that you will give your input when it is necessary. And so acknowledging and really setting those expectations for being able to participate and allowing others to participate. And then the last one for building a psychologically safe working environment is just to respond productively. So appreciate and destigmatizing failure. You've already hopefully you've set the stage, you've shared the expectations for when failure arises, but really appreciating it in the moment when it does happen is a really big step. And when it happens, encouraging that continuous learning through failure. It's going to happen. It should be seen as a good thing, and we should all learn from it. All right, what I'm going to ask you to do is just have a piece of paper in front of you, or if you don't have a piece of paper and a pencil, I see some, you can type it in the notes on your phone. You can type it on, you can open an email, do whatever you want. But I'm going to go through these 6 questions, and this is just for you. You're not going to share this with anybody, but this is what you're going to write down the answers to these questions, and these are going to be brought back up for you to reflect on in a little bit later in this presentation. So the first question that I want you to answer on your piece of paper is, what is your individual practice for communication? You can think of this on a personal level, on a professional level. Are you comfortable with it? How do you approach it? Things like that. I want you to just to take a minute and answer this question number 1 on your paper. And then the second question is, how did conflict take place in your primary unit growing up? The reason I ask this question is because we all base what we do on our lived experiences. I'm sure you've seen that in yourself and the people that you work with and the students that you work with. But really acknowledging this and knowing where you're coming from is one of those foundational steps. So how did conflict take place in your primary unit growing up? Number 3, what mistakes have you made for fear of speaking up? Again, you can think of this personally or professionally. Number 4, what emotions are you most comfortable with? And then that leads into number 5, what emotions are you least comfortable with? And then the last one, what beliefs are associated with those emotions? All right, as soon as you're finished writing all of those down, just put that to the side. We'll bring that up a little bit later. And if you haven't had time to finish and you want to take a quick picture of this screen so that you can continue to think about it, you're welcome to do so as well.
Hey, Emily, can we stop for a little bit here and give some, like a minute or two?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, Emily, I think you can continue. Let me be honest with you, just before you continue, we have a lot of good comments in the chat.
Mhm.
And somebody's saying that they're not as in touch with their emotions as they thought, so.
Yeah, when you have to actually take a step back and think about it and write down, even just the physical act of writing it down, you really start to realize that even when I made this presentation like a year ago, I had to go through all of that myself, and I still go through it when I talk to people about this. And yeah, like I said, we're gonna bring this back up, and we're gonna really hopefully take the next steps into going more towards being more comfortable with this and also recognizing it as well. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is again going to be something that you're actively doing, and it's called a TRIZ. I'm not sure if any of y'all are familiar with liberating structures. If you are not familiar with it, Google it. All you have to do is type in liberating structures, and it'll bring this up. And it's one of those where it just kind of gets you more engaged in thinking. And this is my favorite one because it really gets you thinking about what you shouldn't be doing. And it really helps to bring up the thoughts about how do we move out of that situation. So here's what you're going to do. You can scan the QR code, or if you're on your computer and you want to go to the website, you can do that as well. And what I want you to do is you're going to type in here, it is anonymous, but I want you to make a list of all that you can do to make sure that you achieve the worst relationships possible. So have fun with it. Think about what you can do. And as you're doing this, ask yourself, is there anything that you are currently doing that in any way, shape, or form resembles what you are submitting? Get angry. Oh, gossip. Man, that one's hard, right? Hit reply all. Stop it. Yes. Mhm. Talking down, lie, act as if you're better than others. Oh yeah, avoiding conflict. Over talking. Not staying true to your word. Even if you say you're going to show up at a specific time and you don't show up at that time, that right there is one thing that can really harm relationships. Assuming negative intent. There you go. Already using some of the terminology. Per my last email. Again, yes. Funny. Oh my gosh, turn away and walk while somebody's talking. I hope people don't do that. I know it happens. Gaslighting, being inconsiderate, not being accountable, all of those things. Again, as you're reading some of these and as you're answering yourself, asking yourself, is there anything that you are currently doing right now that in any way, shape, or form resembles some of these, even the ones that you submitted yourself? And it's really important here to be brutally honest with yourself. Like I said, this is anonymous, so we're all putting it out there for everyone to see, but you're really reflecting and being as brutally honest as you can with yourself. And I want you to start deciding, just start, you don't have to go too far, but I want you to start deciding what your first steps are going to be to help you stop doing some of these, if you are currently doing them. Impulsive reactions, I like that one. Holding grudges. Redirecting blame. Yes. Oh, competition. That's a good one. Awesome. All right. We're going to do another one of these a little bit later. So we're going to go ahead and move on from this. But thank you guys so much for participating in this. I save all of these responses and use them in my own reflection and when I talk to other people as well. And again, if you haven't heard of TRIZ or liberating structures, please go find it. They're extremely helpful when it comes to presenting and trying to engage your audience. All right, here's our second objective. So we're going to reframe, hopefully, our beliefs and attitudes about conflict. So when it comes to difficult situations, crucial, yes, thank you. There's a website right there. It's wonderful. Go to it. Difficult situations, crucial conversations, and conflict. These are the 4 things that you really need to think about and you need to work through. You can think of them as steps as you want. If you only want to focus on one at a time, it's completely up to you, but I'm going to go through each one to kind of help you navigate these. So the first thing to do, and it seems like common sense sometimes, but it's really difficult to do when you're in the moment. And it's to simply just use language that is respectful of the strengths, skills, talents, and individuality of all. So trying your very, very best to only use language that includes everybody, no matter what skills you have, what level you're at, the talents that you bring to the team, any of that. The second one is the opposite. So it's to avoid, or not opposite, but in contrast, to avoid language that shuts down or impairs communication. The simplest way that I can put this one is to avoid absolutes. So I try my very best to not say the word always, or to not say the word never. If you can really try and reframe the way that you say those things and to avoid those, that terminology, those phrases that really shuts down that communication, you're going to leave it open for people to be able to contribute. And going back to what you need to cultivate those conditions, you really need to let people know that it's the expectation that you're going to be able to talk and give your input. The third one is to recognize everyone's uniqueness. So you're all coming in, again, kind of reflecting back on that self-evaluation of where does conflict come in? What are your experiences with it? And know that everybody's coming in with their own unique experiences. And recognize that as a rich source of problem-solving options. Just because you're the lead in a project where you're trying to solve a problem does not mean that you're the one that has the answers, especially not all of them. And so recognizing that everyone you bring to the table has their own source that they can really bring through input to solve those problems. And then the last one being to demonstrate respect for each other's autonomy and different opinions. The word autonomy often gets misrepresented, and people sort of kind of get away from the actual definition of what autonomy really means. And so what it actually means is it's the ability to self-govern. But that's really all the word means. It doesn't mean that it's just you on your own, you're independent, you don't have to worry about anybody else. It just means that at the end of the day, the decisions that you make, the choices that you make, all of those things, it really comes back to you. You're the one that decided to do that, and it's your really your the expectation for you is to be able to self-govern in those situations, and knowing that other people have that expectation as well. All right, so let's talk about some of the causes for conflict and really delve into some of these strategies for navigating and addressing conflict. I remember when y'all were inputting things about how to maintain the worst relationships. One of the things that somebody said was avoiding conflict, which is not what you want to do. So we're going to go through some of the ways to navigate it. When it comes to communication, just as a whole, I like to put this on here. Eduardo Salas and Scott Tannenbaum, they're kind of like the gurus of teams and teamwork, especially in the field that I work in. And one of the things that they say that I think just sums it up just about as good as you can possibly get is more is not better. Just because you're communicating more does not mean that you're communicating in an effective way. Better is better. So let's learn how to more effectively communicate. The first thing to do is recognize some of the barriers to effective communication, and really thinking about why are communication breakdowns so common in team settings, which essentially is what we all work in on a day-to-day basis. And so let's talk about some of those barriers, just knowing that people have human limitations, right? Human error is always going to be on that list of things that contributes to breakdown and to miscommunications, anything like that. And teams work in situations that create communication challenges. You're working in a system that is not typically set up for you to be successful in this area. And so how do we recognize those barriers and how do we overcome them? So the first one being that humans are human, kind of like I said, you know, we're all susceptible to that. And the first portion under that is the whole everybody knows bias. Anybody resonate with that? I can raise my hand. Sometimes you call it, you know, expert syndrome. You think that because you know that everybody around you also knows. And that is a really big barrier to effective communication, because if you think everybody knows, you're not going to say it, and therefore it's not happening. Or if you say it in a certain way, you think everybody understands, they probably don't, or at least some of them don't. And again, that's going to be a huge barrier to effective communication. So trying to really get it into your mindset that maybe I should ask the question on, does everybody understand what's going on? And hopefully you're in a psychologically safe environment where people can say, hey, I actually don't. Do you mind explaining that so that I can know for when we move on in the future? The second portion under the, you know, human limitations one is this idea of automaticity. Does anybody make their way home in the afternoon and not know how they made their way home? You forget the turns that you made in your car and all those things. Yeah, I feel a lot of heads nodding. I do it quite regularly. Sometimes it can be scary. I don't have no idea how I made it back to my house at the end of the day. And people get into this structure, especially when their day-to-day life is pretty routine. And in some aspects that can be helpful because now you're able to not focus as much energy on a certain task or a certain routine, and you can extend your energy somewhere else. But where this becomes a problem is if you're really kind of stuck in your way and you're comfortable in it and you're in your routine and it's kind of your smooth way of going about your day, you can really get stuck here and not notice when things are different and not be willing to change when things come up, especially if you're bringing on new team members or you're joining a new team. You know, teams nowadays are no longer stable. Sometimes they are from day to day. Most of the times they're not. You're going to be working with different people on different projects. They're going to change, come in and out. The contexts are going to change. And so as much as you possibly can, recognizing where it's okay to be in your routine and where you maybe need to deviate and pay a little bit more attention. And then the last one is simply fear. We talked about this when we were talking about psychological safety, and that, you know, you can't really do anything and you're not going to be willing to do anything if you're constantly in fear, especially in your workplace. You're not going to give your input. You're not going to seek input. You're not going to be willing to admit to the inevitable mistakes. And you're also not going to be able to respond effectively when people are making mistakes and you're noticing them or they're coming to you with them. So really trying to mitigate that as much as possible. And you being a role model for that is going to be one of the first steps. The second, you can call it category for these barriers to effective communication, is all about risks. So having that lack of psychological safety is a huge risk and is therefore going to lead to numerous barriers to effective communication. So again, being a role model for that, and letting people know that it's okay that they come to you with a mistake that they've made and y'all can figure it out together and learn from it. And then that's going to carry on. As soon as you have that first experience, it's almost like an aha moment, and people are then going to carry it on from there because they're going to see the benefit of that. The second one under here is rewards and recognition. There has to be a balance. And what I mean by this is, how good does it feel when somebody recognizes a good job that you've done? Or when somebody rewards you, even with just like a high five or a good job or a coffee one day for something that you've done? It feels good, right? Why this is a barrier to effective communication is because when you have too much of this, and this becomes your extrinsic motivation, then if you don't have it, you're probably not going to stay in those healthy routines, and you're not going to be doing those tasks, so to speak, if you're not getting rewarded for it or if you're not getting recognized for it. So I'm not saying that this is always a bad thing, but I'm saying that this can lead to a lack of effective communication if this is all that you're seeking out, or if this is all that you're giving to your team members. The last one, there's kind of a lot that goes with it, but I'll kind of break it down. The first one being dynamic membership. I mentioned this previously, where the teams that you work on are no longer stable. Your people are coming in and out, retention rates are at an all-time low. Projects come up here and there where you're going to be joining different teams even throughout the day. And so that dynamic membership can make it really difficult, especially when not all of the teams that you're working on have set that foundation for effective communication. The second one being those changing tasks. Have you ever been working on a project and you're working really hard on one aspect of it, and then somebody comes in and says, oh, we're going to change this, and you need to just scrap what you did and start over again. Really frustrating, right? Those rewards and recognitions aren't there. But knowing that that's going to happen and being prepared for that and setting the foundation for that can help you sort of mitigate that one. Hierarchy. Like, anybody feeling that right now? Hierarchy, that org chart that is just kind of glaring on your screen when you log into your employee system, whatever it may be, can really, if it's taken advantage of, can really be a big barrier to effective communication. If you don't feel like you can talk to anybody above or below you in that metaphorical, not metaphorical, but that org chart, it's a problem. You need to let people know that it's okay to talk to you and that you can talk to people who technically are your supervisors or are up on that level. Anytime you have to hand off, this is really big in healthcare, anytime you have to hand off information, a patient, anything like that, that's where a lot of mistakes happen, and that's where a lot of miscommunication happens. If you look at the Joint Commission's documents that they publish, they tell you that the #1 cause for medical errors is lack of effective communication. Most of the time, it is during those handoffs. It's when you're transitioning either care or information, whatever the case may be, from one provider to another. People just, there's not a systematic way that people are using. And that's when a lot of miscommunication occurs. And then routine deviations. Did you show up late to work one day? Maybe the coffee maker's out. Are you not able to use the internet one day and you have a really hard time communicating? Anything that you can think of that's going to be a deviation in your routine is going to mess up the way that you communicate. So again, being aware of it is going to help you mitigate these barriers. And then that last category, chicken or the egg, between trust and better communication. So the answer is yes. You know, it's a cyclical thing. So trust leads to better communication. Quality communication leads to trust. And hopefully it is a healthy cycle where one is reinforcing the other. However, if you have a breakdown in one of these, that's where you start to create a vicious cycle, which is extremely hard to get out of. So knowing that you're going to have to give a little bit in both of these areas to make sure that you have that healthy cycle going on. What are the causes of conflict? There's two main types, although I will say there is a third that we kind of put out there, but the first one is interpersonal, meaning that you're not getting along with somebody, that you're not seeing eye to eye. You have different goals, values, styles, viewpoints. This is where you don't like the person that you work with, quite honestly, and it brings up some of this conflict. The second one is informational, being that you have one piece of information, I have another, and it's not the same. And we need to figure out what happened so that we can be on the same page. This isn't, I don't like you, you don't like me. This is, we just quite simply have two different pieces. I say that we're supposed to be there at 2 o'clock. You thought we were supposed to be there at 3 o'clock. That's where that information, that informational conflict. And then that third one that I mentioned is imaginary. Meaning that, have you ever gone into somebody's office and they just like had a face or they made a certain comment or whatever, and now you're assuming that conflict is there when it's actually not? That's what I mean by that. And so I don't put that on here directly, but that is a very big one. All right, so interpersonal conflict. How do we work our way through this when I don't like you, you don't like me, and now we're conflicting in the workplace. We call this the desk script, the de-esc script, whatever you want to call it, to help kind of de-escalate the situation. And the first thing that you need to do in these situations is to describe the specific situation. And the kicker here is with concrete data. If you cannot describe what's going on, if you can't describe this conflict that's going on with actual data and evidence, then you might be in that imaginary assumed conflict area, and you need to rethink why you're upset in the first place. The second thing to do is to express how the current situation is making you feel, and also to express your concerns. So why is this a problem, and why do we need to work towards fixing this? The third thing is to suggest other alternatives and to hopefully seek agreement. Never go into a conversation just to complain. Always go into a conversation, especially when it's conflict-based, with some sort of solution. And then the last thing is just to state the consequences in terms of how they are going to impact the team. And hopefully from then you can strive for consensus. So just those 4 easy steps when you're not seeing eye to eye with somebody can really help de-escalate the situation. Again, starting with that first one being, if you don't have actual data or evidence for the situation that you're finding yourself in, you're probably in that imaginary assumed conflict realm. Informational, how do we go about getting through, we have 2 completely different pieces of information. So what does higher quality communication look and sound like? So the first thing when it comes to informational conflict is to cut out the redundancy. So unique information can be related to an area of expertise, the status of the situation, or an action that is needed. So making sure that whatever you're bringing to the table and hopefully what you're encouraging from your team members is unique information, and hopefully you're not just all repeating the same thing over and over again. But again, making sure that it all lines up. So the second one is all about closed loop communication, and this is where you're going to catch those errors. So you said we needed to get to the movie at 2 o'clock. I thought we needed to get there at 3 o'clock. When we communicated that originally, we didn't close the loop and we didn't check back to see that what we heard was actually what was said. So it's all about calling out originally, hey, I'm going to meet you at the movies at 2 o'clock. Checking back, you're going to repeat back to me and say, hey, I hear, oh, I'm going to meet you at the movies at 3 o'clock. Oh, that's when I'm going to say, oh, no, I said 2 o'clock. And then we can make sure that when we're leaving that initial conversation, that we have the same piece of information. One of really the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has actually taken place. And so again, never assuming, never going into that everybody knows bias, and making sure you close the loop in communication. This is one that we teach our health profession students in pretty much every training and class that they go in. And even the smallest thing that is misinterpreted can end up causing patient harm and sometimes fatally. And so that's a really, really big one. So the third one is conveying. So really reflecting your understanding of something. So this is really big when it comes to interpretations. So if somebody is saying something, you're interpreting it one way that they didn't mean. This is where it's time for you to speak up and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm understanding. Is this what you're intending? And then the fourth one is all about boundary spanning. And this one is pretty common, I would imagine, in your fields, because you're constantly communicating with people outside of your immediate team. And so again, making sure you do 1 through 3 here on your screen, even just more than you feel like you probably should when it comes to communicating with people outside of your immediate team, whether it's the students that you work with, the preceptors, anything that you can think of, making sure you're closing the loop and making sure you're conveying understanding is a really big portion here. All right, being a great team member, 10 action items that I want you to take and that I want you to start using as quickly as you possibly can. And again, I'm not telling you you have to do all 10 of these. You're never going to. Pick one, start with one. That's all you have to do. So the first one being stay alert and be aware of what's going on in your team, where it's headed, and how you can help. That's all that is it's you being situationally aware of what's going on, not just with yourself, but with your team as well. Ask, how can I help? Seems simple, right? But even offering to provide support in just a small situation without being asked for help is going to go a long way with your team members. The third one is to seek ways to adapt and improve, both for yourself and for your team members. If you're just stuck in your routine, in your cycle, sometimes that can be a good thing, but sometimes that can be a bad thing. So always try and seek ways of improving and adapting. The fourth one is to fulfill your commitments. Again, like I said, if you said you're going to be there at a certain time, at that time, that is going to go a long way with people. Being an effective communicator, using those tools that we just talked about. The sixth one is to care more about what is right than who is right. Again, that's kind of that humility portion of thinking of yourself less and thinking of others more. Thinking about the tasks, the situations, everything that's outside of the person, thinking about how that is right and not necessarily about the person that's doing it. That's also going to help with that rewards and recognition barrier sometimes. Acknowledging your mistakes and then voicing your appreciation when people voice their mistakes. You can't get anywhere in life if you don't learn from those mistakes, and the first step in that is just to acknowledge that they happened and then go from there. Number 8, provide and seek feedback within your team. You have to get that feedback, whether it's, a positive or a negative, constructive feedback, all those things. We, as students, typically it's really easy to receive that feedback because they're so used to it. When it comes to their professors and their preceptors, they're so used to receiving all of this feedback and using that. What's really difficult to transition into is being able to provide feedback. And so what I encourage you to do is I encourage you to think about the people that are giving you feedback on a day-to-day basis. What do you like about how they're doing it? What do you not like about how they're doing it? And how can you then adapt yourself and know how to, provide good feedback from there. Don't be a toxic teammate. And I know that kind of, again, sounds pretty common sense and like everybody should know that. But really kind of reflecting and kind of bringing on that self-awareness of, is what I just said really necessary? Or taking a moment before you respond to something or before you react to something, and being like, is what I'm about to say actually going to contribute in a positive way, or should I calm down a little bit? And then the last one, always be loyal. So represent your team and your team members when interacting with people in your team. This can be difficult, especially if you have a lot of that interpersonal conflict going on in your working environment. But really trying to stay as loyal as possible and respecting the people that you work with. Again, that's going to go a very long way, especially if someone hears that in a completely outside situation, you respected the team members. All right, get your phones back out and go ahead and scan the QR code, or again, you can go to the website here if you want to do that. And I want you to start thinking about and writing down, what will you do today to improve yourself as an effective team member and to improve your relationships? What I want you to do here is I want you to look back at that self-reflection, those 6 questions that you answered on your piece of paper that's in front of you. And use that as well as some of the tools and strategies that we talked about to think about what you will do today, even if it's just one thing, just one single thing to improve yourself as a team member. Effectively listen, less eye rolls. That's funny. Hey, if that's your one thing, go for it. That's probably going to help even you as an individual. Try to trust. Yep. Assuming that positive intent. Speaking up more, being on time. I'm telling you, man, if you can be on time for somebody, that really is going to set the foundation for your relationship with them. Be more empathetic. How can I help you today? Yes, getting ahead of it and not having to be asked for help. Yep, take a deep breath. Always good to start there. Not panic. Yeah, considering if conflict is more imaginary. Again, if you can't back up what you're feeling with data and with evidence, you're probably in that imaginary realm. Smile, it's contagious. I love that. Accepting you can't control everything. Listening to understand, not to react or respond. That's always a good one. Take breaks to regroup. Self-awareness, more trauma. Always say, yeah. Focus on the positives. Ask more questions. That's another good one. People, that's in that fear realm where people don't want to ask questions. And we run into that a lot with our students, with our med students and all of our other health profession students. It can be difficult to feel safe to ask a question sometimes. Encourage others. Yep. Be open to change. Yes. Breathe more. I love that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for participating in this today. And every time I do this, I learn more, and I always change this every time I present this. So I'll probably, well, I can guarantee you I will take some of this and use it in my next training with our medical residents. And then that is all I have for today. Here are some of my references. And then we're constantly, as an office, posting, or we're trying to get better at the whole social media thing. So we're constantly trying to post on, yes, I know it's no longer Twitter, but I haven't gotten that out of my brain yet. And then LinkedIn as well. Resources, different trainings that we're offering, different insights, things like that. So if you want to go ahead and follow us, please feel free. And this is my information as well. If you ever need to reach out for anything, I'm always available. We're a small department, so if I'm not, I know somebody that will be.
Emily, thank you so much for this presentation. The only ask that people are asking right now if you can share the PowerPoint with us.
Yeah, should I just email it to you? Is that
Yes.
the easiest? Okay.
Yes, so just email it to me and I'll email it out to everybody once we have the recording set up for everybody. Any questions that you guys want to ask Emily before she signs off?
I have a question.
Yes.
Excellent presentation. I really enjoyed this,
Thank you.
and for sending it to us. My question is, you mentioned earlier that on a managerial level, as well as, well, any level, practicing these items, I can see where I could definitely benefit. How often do you teach managers and supervisors?
Often I would say it's about split 50-50 between the students that we work with, and I even kind of extend that into the residents that we work with as well. Plus we also provide preceptor faculty development in a few different aspects, both here at the Health Science Center and also outside of it as well. So I would say it's about a 50-50 split on the people that we're presenting this to. What I'll also say is when I am giving this presentation, this training to our medical residents, their preceptors are often with them during this training. And with those sort of engaging activities that that y'all were doing while we were here, that gives them an opening to talk to their preceptors that they don't often have. And so that has also been extremely helpful because yes, on that org chart, you know, they're pretty far apart when it comes to that, you know, ladder that we think about. But really giving them that opportunity to talk about it is really helpful for the preceptors in that leadership role as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I see how it crossed over to Crucial Conversations. That was a nice class too. So do we ask for specific classes or how does that work?
From us,
Yes, like do the residents and the managers ask for specific
so
um
it kind of started and how we got into the residency area was at one of our local hospitals around here. When the teaming requirement became a thing in medical residency and that GME, they reached out to our department to meet that requirement. And so that's how it started. And now we have a three, I guess you call it 3-part series, where we address everything from teamwork, teaming, and then we finish with this one with the navigating conflict. And that is based on feedback that we got from the preceptors that are working in the hospital with these residents. So that's how we started. And then, yeah, we go through all of that with that local hospital.
fabulous. Thank you.
Any additional questions? No? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Emily, again, thank you so much for doing this presentation for us. I am going to share the PowerPoint once I get it. I will share the recording after the fact. And remember, if you have anybody who wants to join, don't be afraid of sharing this information with them. We are here. We are open to everything. And remember, we'll see you next month for our needs assessment, lessons learned, and start thinking if you want to, we're opening again for people to present at the academy. So don't be afraid if you want to take that plunge and to present with us. All right. See you next month.